Dave Lochran, Adam Scher, Alex Baker, Awesemo himself. It is the Deeper Dive presented by Awesemo.com and Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. Boys, how are we today?
Doing pretty good. I enjoy the split slate days. Kind of gives me something to do all day. So looking forward to tonight's.
All right, what's going on, Alex?
Yeah, this is great, man. Getting to sweat a DFS contest and be on a show at the same time. I mean, this is the dream.
I don't know if you're serious or not.
I mean, like, that's why we're doing what we do, right?
That's right.
Playing DFS, talking about DFS, this is what it's all about.
All right, well, let's jump into the main slate. We've got 9 games to talk about here. Adam, New York Yankees, Tampa Bay Rays, Domingo Germán, Yonny Chirinos. I don't really have pitching in this game. Do you?
No, not really. I mean, you could, I guess, make an argument for Germán just because he is a good pitcher and he's probably not going to have a lot of ownership. But I think that there's a couple of other spots that I can get to if I'm looking for low and high upside pitching. His price tag on FanDuel in particular is, I think, the most appealing. But on DraftKings at 10.5 and on Yahoo, where you have some really reasonably priced aces, it's kind of tough for me to get there on a guy that we don't really expect to go too deep into the game, has a middle of the road matchup against Tampa Bay, and has some potential weather concerns as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, low-owned guys that are expensive with upside are usually pretty appealing, but you just said it. There are a couple other ones that are similarly priced that I like a little bit better, also coming in at low ownership, but we'll get to all of them as we move throughout the show. Alex, what's your take on the pitching matchup here between the Yankees and Rays?
I think Germán projects pretty well, but the price tags are high. If I play him on any site, it'd be Yahoo, where he's 49, which is a little bit lower than the 10.5K on DraftKings. FanDuel, he's more reasonably priced at 9,100. The matchup, a little bit below average for strikeouts versus the Rays. But he's a good pitcher. Yeah, as Adam mentioned, doesn't go really deep in games. So overall, like, pretty good spot, but not worthy of a top dollar price tag.
Do you like any hitters from either side? Yankees obviously have a high total, as they do seemingly every single night.
Definitely, yeah. I think any game with an over-under of 10, you got to be interested in bats. And what I'm seeing is on Yahoo, the Rays have really good prices. A couple in particular, Austin Meadows at $10 leading off. Avisail Garcia, he's batting 5th at $7. And with a team with a 5-team total, like any guy in the heart of the order at a low price, you gotta give him some heavy consideration. On the Yankee side, I think that Didi Gregorius, for some reason, has really low prices today, and he's batting 6th. So I think he makes a nice play, and then the stack is in play on DraftKings and Yahoo in particular.
Yeah, Didi definitely stood out to me at that price tag. Adam, as far as hitting goes in this game, are you on board with the Yankees? And if so, how much so? Because there are a few other teams, granted expensive teams, whether it be Boston or Washington, a couple of others that we can get into. Yankees are always going to be up there as someone to consider just based on the raw power scattered throughout this lineup. But is this a team you see yourself getting to? And do you think they're a little bit underpriced on DraftKings?
Yeah, I think they're definitely underpriced. And I think a lot of it will come down, like my exposure to the Yankees will come down to how much ownership we have them projected for, because on one hand, I think the price tags really do stand out and you could maybe see ownership end up pretty high there. But on the other hand, you do have the Nats that'll draw a lot of ownership. The Dodgers probably will. The Red Sox should. Like there are a lot of spots to kind of spread out offense here. And with the Yankees, they're always a team where even if it's not an ideal matchup, which I don't think it is tonight against Chirinos, they still are, still have a really high ceiling because of how talented they are. You guys mentioned Gregorius at that price tag with the platoon advantage. Hicks has the platoon advantage as well. But then you also have Sanchez at a cheap price tag at 4,300, who is, pretty much the best hitting catcher in baseball or one of the top 2 or 3. Aaron Judge with tons of power, Encarnacion with plenty of power. Like, it's still just a really deep lineup that's really affordable.
All right. What about the other side? Any interest in some cheaper guys, whether it be, Austin Meadows down there batting leadoff at 4,300 on DraftKings, Kiermaier batting cleanup? Anybody interest you for this Tampa Bay side?
Not really. It's obviously a positive park shift for them. Their left-handed power in particular going into Yankee Stadium. But Erman against lefties since the start of last year, a 24.7% strikeout percentage, 154 expected ISO, 299 expected WOBA. This year, he struck out 27.9% of lefties. He gives up a little bit of power. So maybe, taking a one-off here or there, whether it be Meadows or, like Nate Lowe at first base. But overall, I think Tampa's one of the less appealing stacks to me here.
Any interest in these Rays bats in lefty-friendly park, Alex?
Yeah, as I mentioned on Yahoo in particular, but on FanDuel, like they look like they're about fairly priced, and the ownership is lowest on FanDuel, so I think they could be a nice contrarian stack. And I think although that 4.9 team total isn't exactly inspiring in 2019, it's only a 9-game slate tonight, so I think a lot of these kind of teams around 5 runs in expectation are going to be in play.
All right, let's move it on to Baltimore and Washington. Alex, Eric Fetty on the mound against Aaron Brooks. Really exciting matchup here. But Brooks has been pretty rough in the home runs department this season. And then Eric Fetty, I think we know all we need to know about Eric Fetty thus far. He's been okay, but just a supremely low upside pitcher. Sure, he's going up against Baltimore. Hell, I thought I was on Voth yesterday, so I'm never opposed to getting some exposure to anybody against Baltimore. But you use the word not inspiring, or the phrase not inspiring. Basically, everything Eric Fetty does is not inspiring.
I have to agree with you. I mean, on the season, 13% strikeouts. That is one of the lowest in the MLB for sure. His run preventions have been good, but it's mostly on account of luck. There's a 1.7 gap between ERA of 3.8 and xFIP of 5.5. So definitely, I don't really understand why 7% of people might pick him tonight on DraftKings. That seems a little bit high to me. It's a good matchup versus Baltimore. But Baltimore is even projected for 5.2 runs, which is quite a bit higher than their talent level should indicate. Being a below average team and getting on base and power. So I think, if anything, I'm more interested. Well, I mean, the over under is 11.5, so I'm pretty interested in bats on both sides here.
Yeah, so am I. I'll go to you, Adam. Let's just transition straight to hitters. Really not a bad matchup on either side. Washington's got a monster implied total here, one of the highest on the slate. And Baltimore's isn't crazy high, but it's high enough to have some interest in them, especially against the guy in Fetty who really doesn't miss bats. Also, temperatures at Camden Yards going to be 90 degrees. And for what it's worth, you have wind blowing out to right field as well.
Yeah, I mean, Washington, I think they were one of the best stacks yesterday, and I have them as one of the best stacks again today. Aaron Brooks is just kind of a guy who's never done anything really well in the major leagues. Baltimore right now is just running a bunch of these guys out there because they don't want to rush any of their pitching prospects to the majors. There's no reason to with the current form of this team. So you're just getting a bunch of retreads that aren't really very good. Brooks clearly being one of them. You have a deep Washington lineup here. Howie Kendrick is in the lineup in place of Ryan Zimmerman, which makes them even better. Kendrick's price tag is expensive, and maybe people shy away from that, but he's been a really good hitter, and he's hitting in the middle of this order, so I like him a lot. Obviously, Juan Soto, Matt Adams from the left side. I was pulling up Chance Sisco's numbers throwing out runners because he struggled with it a lot last year, and there had been reports that he had gotten better this year. But I noticed the Nats running pretty much at will yesterday. And so far this year, in the majors, he has allowed 17 stolen bases in 20 attempts. So that's, obviously really good for Trey Turner. It's good for Adam Eaton, who had a stolen base yesterday as well. Kendrick maybe can grab one, so could Dozier. So it just gives even more upside to the Nats having Sisco behind the plate.
Yeah, no question. Who are your favorite bats from this game on both sides, Alex?
Let me just throw out, I just saw a report that Aaron Brooks will only pitch 40 to 50 pitches today, and then Gabriel Ynoa will pitch. Another guy who's not any good, but yeah. So I'm not going to dwell on any pitcher here, but I think that the whole lineup's in play basically for Washington. Like that team total of 7 is insane. The ownership is extremely high on FanDuel compared to DraftKings and Yahoo. So I'm a little bit cooler on them on FanDuel. But in particular, Adam Eden batting second. On FanDuel, Howie Kendrick is batting 5th and he's 2,600. On Yahoo, Matt Adams at 11. All great values, good cash plays. And then on the Baltimore side, Jonathan VR leading off is underpriced on each site. The whole lineup is just dirt cheap on Yahoo. I have them as a 29% chance of being the top value stack today, which is pretty insane given that there are 18 teams. So I think you can pick any of them in cash on Yahoo. And then on DraftKings and FanDuel, they're priced very well, but the ownership is very high relative to their chance of success. You can see the specifics on my top stack tool, so I don't really see them as a great GPP play, but I would probably have them if I was doing cash.
Okay. Adam, just because this is a game with quite a bit of offense, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I want to single out Victor Robles in tournaments. Obviously a lot of this lineup's going to get a ton of ownership and they're all good plays, but Robles is relatively expensive hitting 8th, and he's someone that almost never is owned even in Nat stacks, even on slates where the Nats are popular because of his price tag and where he's hitting in the order. But this is a guy that through his first 440 major league plate appearances has just shy of a 200 ISO, a 101 WRC plus, and has stolen 16 bases. He is only 22 years old. He's only going to get better. We've seen some signs of life at the plate, over the last month and a half after some changes he made. So whenever it's a slate where I'm really heavy on the Nats, I always end up really overweight on Victor Robles, and I expect that'll be the case again tonight.
Yep, I could see that being the case as well. Alex, is the stack tool updated on the site?
I think it is. I mean, I just let me check. I think let's see. It looks like it's this morning's stacks, but if I just updated it now,
I want to be able to follow along with you here.
Yeah, I thought I had updated it, my bad. But if you guys all who are looking at it refresh, then you'll see the main slate stuff.
Beautiful. We are in business. All right, that's what I'm talking about. Yep, perfect. Let's keep it rolling then.
Before we move on, like Baltimore and New York both are a couple of weather spots. What I'm seeing is a potential of a shortened game because the chance of rain is kind of low when at game time, and then it steadily increases. So I think that there's a potential you won't get 9 innings with this game just based on the weather models.
Interesting. Okay. Definitely worth mentioning. Looking at the Philadelphia Phillies and the Dodgers here, Citizens Bank Park. The Dodgers, Adam, have hit 15 extra base hits and 9 home runs in the first 2 games of the series. That's pretty decent. The ball's been flying out of Citizens Bank Park. It's going to be 92 degrees there at first pitch. It's going to be really hot. And you've got Nick Pivetta on the mound. I mean, if you want to talk about rostering Kenta Maeda, that's fine. I don't have any interest in him, but if you do, go for it. Otherwise, let's talk about how Pivetta's allowed multiple home runs in 6 of his last 9 starts, and it's pretty much just in line to get bludgeoned tonight.
Yeah, I would have had some interest in Maeda if Philadelphia's lineup looked a bit different, but rostering him against 6 lefties isn't normally where I want to be. Granted, there are a lot of strikeouts still because, Miller strikes out, Nick Williams strikes out. Andrew Knapp is a huge upgrade for Maeda over JT Realmuto despite the platoon advantage or disadvantage, but it is a downgrade for him. He strikes out about 20 to 21% of left-handed hitters compared to 30+% of righties. So I still think he's reasonably priced on DraftKings at 8,300, and he is projected for he's up to 24% ownership. It was lower this morning. So if he's up there, I don't think I'll get to that much. If it were to come back down, I could get to some, but mostly interested in Dodgers bats here. I mean, Nick Pivetta certainly has talent. He probably has more talent than a $5,600 price tag, or the most pitchers with a $5,600 price tag. But it's a pretty brutal matchup here with a lot of left-handed power in this lineup. No Verdugo in the lineup is, a benefit. He gets another right-handed bat in David Freese. But still, plenty of risk here. It's a good park for hitters. And the only site where you would really consider rostering him would be DraftKings, but you have another pitcher that's 4,100 that you can go to. So I don't really see the need to get to Pivetta.
Yeah, I have zero interest in getting to Pivetta, honestly. It's way too dangerous. I'd rather play a lot of pitchers at Coors than Pivetta against the Dodgers. That's how dangerous I view this Dodgers team, and that's how bad I think this Philadelphia starting pitching staff is right now. Alex, what are you doing with this game here at Citizens Bank Park?
I think it's a game where you got the matchup's actually really good with the Phillies striking out about 15% more than an average lineup today. So like that, but still they're projected to have 5.1 runs. So all in all, I'm getting kind of a below average projection, and he's priced above average. So if I like him on any site, it might be FanDuel, where he's priced the lowest of the three sites. But really, both teams are more in play for the bats tonight. The over-under is 11, which is insanely high, and the price tags are pretty affordable on every site. So I think there's definitely value here.
So who are your favorite bats from this game, both sides?
On Yahoo and FanDuel, I like Jock Peterson. He's only 12 on Yahoo and 2,800 on FanDuel. Somehow, like, they must not watch this home run derby. Like, what are they thinking with these prices, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I heard he was like 50% owned in some contests yesterday, though. So, like, we have him projected for 35% on FanDuel. If he is that high, I think you have to start considering fading him, just because most games batters don't score above their projection. Or like a majority of games, I should say. So there's pretty good chance he gets less than the 14 points I have him projected for. David Freese at 2,800 is a good value on FanDuel. Russell Martin at catcher on Yahoo is $7, so I think that's a cash game spot. And then the whole Phillies lineup on DraftKings is kind of underpriced. I forgot to mention AJ Pollock on DraftKings is a surefire cash lock at 3,800, batting fifth. On the other sites, he's priced up a little bit more.
Adam, do you have any thoughts on? You mentioned that you didn't like Meta because of all the lefties in the Phillies lineup, which totally understandable. And again, the park is playing so heavily to power. Do you have any interest in the Philly bats?
Not a ton. Like, there are some really good spots on this slate to get to offense. Philadelphia is coming in. I'm running a crunch as we talk, but they're coming in as one of my lower owned stacks, even with all the restrictions that I put in place to try and spread out, to try and get different stacks created in Fantasy Cruncher. So, they do have a lot of lefties, but for the most part, they're not very good lefties. And Maeda isn't a bad pitcher, even against lefties. And on top of that, the Dodgers bullpen's good.
All right. 3 in the books. Good time for me to let you know that Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports is the sponsor of the Deeper Dive, and that you can get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports Rewards points, which is as good as cash to play on the site as money, by using the sign-up code AWESEMO, AWESEMO. And here's how you do it. Very simple, because we can't drop the links in the YouTube chat anymore. So I got to reroute you, but it's very easy. And you get those $30 upon depositing. And you don't have to worry about people throwing in 150 lineups. Also, some pretty sizable PGA contests going on right now. Lowest rake in the industry over at Yahoo. Go to awesemo.com. On the homepage, you'll see the Spotlight Hitters article, and the link is right there at the top of the article. Just click that link, sign up, and you are good to go. Through us, $30, deposit bonus, boom. Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, sponsor of the Deeper Dive. Proud to have them. All right, let's move it on. Boston and Toronto. Adam, Eduardo Rodriguez, Aaron Sanchez, He has a negative K- BB rate against righties this year. Last year, he had a negative K- BB rate against lefties. So at least he switches things up. Let's talk about Erod first because he's going to get some ownership.
Yeah, the Erod ownership is interesting to me because I certainly think it's an okay spot, and I think he's a good enough pitcher. But
I was surprised by it as well, based on everyone so comparably priced to him.
Right, exactly. It's just that when you look at upside, he's kind of priced where it's unlikely for him to actually put up a score that you have to have him or that you wish you had him, unless it's because like every other pitcher on the slate fails. And there are plenty of pitchers around him that I think have higher strikeout percentages. Robbie Ray being one in Texas,
Yeah.
But you could also, you can look to Kenta Maeda for $1,200 less. Also that gives you similar upside. So it's not that I dislike Rodriguez, but if he does come in around 25% owned, I expect I'll be under the field on that. It's an okay matchup against Toronto. It's clearly not the best lineup, but they do have a lot of right-handed power. They are still in Fenway, and Rodriguez generally doesn't go all that deep into games. So it's not like he's going to bail you out with a bunch of innings pitched all that often. So I think he's okay. I just don't like him as much as we have the field projected to like him.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised by it. But you know what? Erod is generally pretty popular whenever he's in like a decent matchup. The thing is, his price has come up and it's more comparably priced with a lot of other good arms that are more likely to give you 30 fantasy points than Erod ever is. I know last game he was very solid, but for the most part, you generally don't see that from him. Alex, what are your thoughts on Erod here against the Blue Jays?
So I think the matchup is about average versus Blue Jays. They have about average ability to get on base and just slightly better than average power. The park in Fenway is definitely a minus, but his numbers for the season kind of reflect that already. And the strikeout matchup is slightly positive with the Blue Jays. I have them projected for 23.7% Ks compared to 23% for the league. So all in all, I think just kind of like an average spot. And I like his price tag on FanDuel and Yahoo at 8,343, but on DraftKings at 9,500. That kind of makes me balk a little bit.
What about hitters? Obviously, Boston in a premier spot against Sanchez, but let's talk about this matchup for a second because Sanchez has done a terrible job of keeping runners off the base paths. It's been brutal. His walk rate is super high, particularly against righties. K rate is through the floor. Everything looks bad except the one thing, and he allows home runs at a pretty average rate, but I don't know. That's not something I would be terribly concerned about when targeting Boston bats today.
Yeah, they have a team total of 7.1, so the Vegas bettors are definitely thinking this is about as high potential you're going to get in Fenway. Aaron Sanchez, obviously, as you pointed out, really not a great pitcher. Gives up a lot of home runs, a lot of power. So I think you gotta think Boston is as good as anyone tonight. And one thing I like about the stack is that on DraftKings and Yahoo, it's supposed to be pretty low owned. So I see a potential edge there.
Adam, you like Boston here? I'm assuming the answer would be yes.
Yeah, Sanchez, used to be kind of good against righties. Now he's just terrible against everyone. Like you said, he doesn't give up a ton of power. He puts guys on base. He gives up some power, but it's not like he's, a Nick Pivetta type or someone like that. So it's not something that I incorporate when I'm playing, 150 lineups. But if I were hand building one lineup or three lineups or whatever, I would keep in mind just the type of pitcher that Sanchez is. And I would give preference to full stacking Boston as opposed to one-offs just because he tends to walk a lot of guys and do a decent job of limiting power. So you have, I think, more upside by having, like 5 Red Sox in your lineup than just trying to guess which one happens to come up with the bases loaded after he walks 3 guys. But that aside, it's clearly a really good spot. Rafael Devers is probably a really good opportunity to get a contrarian play because he's the most expensive hitter in the lineup on DraftKings at 5,700. That makes him one of the most or the most expensive hitter on the slate. And he's a really good power hitter. He's got a good matchup here against Sanchez. So I think Boston, the top of this order, gives you a chance to pay up to be contrarian probably.
Okay. Do you guys have anything else on this game before we move on?
I don't mind some one-offs from the Blue Jays just because, Rodriguez isn't a bad pitcher, but you're just getting a lot of cheap power potential with guys like Guerrero and Grichuk.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about Cleveland and Detroit, Alex. Mike Clevenger, Spencer Turnbull. Obviously, this is a very good spot for Clevenger from top to bottom. I mean, he came off the injured list not looking great, but still had some strikeout stuff. We know his strikeout stuff's incredible. Granted, he hasn't thrown that many innings this season, but he's got a 40% K rate. 2.58 xFIP this year. This small sample, and he's going to regress, but he's also been really good. He's the heaviest favorite on the slate. The lowest total on the slate, lowest implied total, goes to the Detroit Tigers. I could go on for quite a long time as to explaining why Clevenger is going to be one of the most popular pitchers tonight. And he's not even that expensive given the matchup and the conditions.
Yeah, I mean, like his 39% K rate for the year is insane. And the matchup is prime versus the Tigers. So you got to love it. His price tag isn't even that high at 9,900, 9,400, and 54 on the 3 sites. So I think he's probably your top pitcher tonight.
Adam, do you agree?
Yeah, it never takes much for me to get behind Mike Clevenger, and I love the spot here. He's my number one pitcher. I know he'll be I expect he'll be the highest owned, but I really don't care. It sucks watching him pitch because it just makes me really uncomfortable, but the results are normally there. Even if you want to put aside the 39% strikeout percentage through his first handful of starts this year, since the start of last year, he has a 27.3% strikeout percentage, right. 3.69 xFIP. He's just a really good pitcher. He doesn't have huge splits against lefties either. You prefer him to face righties, but he still does fine with lefties. So I'm not really concerned that you're getting left-handed bats like, Candelario and Reyes in the lineup and Castro. But a really good spot for Clevenger. I don't have any reason not to roster him on any site.
So DraftKings and FanDuel, by the way, he's the highest projected owned pitcher on both DraftKings and FanDuel and Yahoo, all three of them. What about on Yahoo where he's $54? Does that change anything for you? The reason I ask isn't because I think 54 is too much, but because Paddock is 45, Robbie Ray is 43, right? Like there are a lot of good pitchers here that are a lot cheaper than Clevenger. So let's talk about that just for a minute before we move on.
Yeah, and then Cole's not that much more expensive.
Right.
But so I would say it's harder to get to him on Yahoo, but the way I would view it is that if you're looking for the top, ceiling per dollar, you're probably looking at Paddock and looking at Ray. But there's going to be a lot of lineups where you get those two guys in, you get whatever hitters or whatever stack you want, and you still have the money to upgrade to Clevenger. And I have him projected for more points than any pitcher, more raw points for any pitcher than except for Garrett Cole. So that's still something I would be looking to do.
Okay. Alex, what about batters here? Spencer Turnbull has been solid this season. He's striking out, just shy of a batter per inning. He's done a solid job of limiting base runners, limiting runs. Actually, limiting runs. Base runners, not as much. But Cleveland has a high total here in Progressive Field, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them mount a decent amount of runs against Turnbull. But where do they rank for you among the 18 teams on this slate?
Yeah, I have to agree with you that it wouldn't be that surprising if they blow up tonight. I've been trying to call that shot numerous times over the past couple of weeks, but it seems like Cleveland hasn't really had any big games, but that could be the night. They always are a little bit lower owned than their potential, and tonight is no exception. But the extent of that isn't quite as high as some other teams. Actually, I gotta rewind a little bit because I was saying how much I like Boston and their ownership, but looking at the weather from that game, I think it's going to be more than likely postponed. So I'm going to cross that game off. With that in mind, I think Cleveland is probably a pretty good stack with just being kind of like sneaky compared to their potential tonight.
All right, Adam, do you like Cleveland bats here against Turnbull?
I think they're okay. It's just not the most talented lineup. Turnbull's an okay pitcher, but he does have pretty strong splits where he kind of dominates righties and then doesn't do as well against lefties. You have around a 6 implied run total for the Indians. Lindor, of course, I always like. Santana is more expensive than I would really like to pay for at first base, but then you get to some, pretty cheap value with Kipnis at second, Ramirez reasonably priced at third. Jake Bauers has some power. So I don't think they'll be like my highest owned stack or anything like that, but I do think it's a high upside spot.
Okay.
They're looking like, in my initial crunch before I sort anything, just kind of to see how things shook out, they came in that like 5 to 10 range for me.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's right about where I have them too. Maybe I think it was like 6 or 7, but yeah, it seems reasonable. There are some other quality teams on this slate. Obviously, Coors was the afternoon slate, but still a lot of high total games and high implied run total teams. Adam, moving to Miami against San Diego, Chris Paddock, I find the price tag to be extremely friendly on FanDuel, 8,900. We just mentioned them on Yahoo, $45. And I think it's only right that we at least put it in context with DraftKings too, where he's 10-9, but his ownership is also going to be significantly lower than these other sites because of that price tag. And he's facing, arguably the worst team in baseball, particularly against righties. Looking at like 10, 11% ownership on DraftKings here, and you're once again going to get a Miami team that's running out. Let me pull it up here. I've lost it. It's running out 7 righties in the lineup, including the pitcher. He's got a 30+% K rate against them this season.
Yeah, there's a couple things that make me like Paddock even on DraftKings. So obviously on FanDuel and on Yahoo, like you said, he's really affordably priced. But on DraftKings, the thing that you want to keep in mind is that point per dollar in baseball tournaments really isn't that important, especially in that it causes people to be really highly owned. But because of the way hitter scoring is, you don't have to have like the best point per dollar, pitchers. You just need guys to get the most points and then, figure it out from your bats. So Paddock is still interesting on DraftKings because, he doesn't project quite as well as Mike Clevenger. He's nowhere near the point per dollar option that Clevenger is, but he's still going to beat Clevenger a pretty high percentage of the time pitching in Miami against this lineup, 30% strikeout percentage against righties, like you said. The only real concern on Paddock is that we know he's not going to go, over 100 pitches or at least not too far over. But Clevenger kind of has those concerns as well. So it's not even like you're, costing yourself too many pitches there. So I do like Paddock in tournaments. In Fantasy Cruncher right now, I got about 15%. And then once I sort and factor in ownership, I expect I'll come up a little bit higher than that. And then another thing that I think makes Paddock a reasonable option even on DraftKings is that you do have Jesse Chavez, who we'll talk about at 4,100. So it's not even like the pricing on the top end pitchers matters all that much. If you're going to be playing some Chavez, it's not going to make a huge difference whether you're spending, $14,000 or $15,000 a pitcher. I
agree. Yeah. The ownership on Paddock, even at that price tag, I think is too low given the matchup. And, you talked about the pitch count. It's a good point to bring up, but man, we've seen him with some just monster fantasy outputs, and he doesn't have to go 115 pitches. So it's not enough to take me off of him. And it sounds like the same way for you. Alex, what are your thoughts on Paddock across the industry?
I think he's definitely in play. I mean, the matchup, as you guys said, is amazing versus Miami. We're seeing one of the lower run totals we've seen in the past few weeks, 3.6. Price tag is super high on DraftKings, so that makes me less interested. On FanDuel and Yahoo, he's more priced to his ability. The guy I'm really interested in, though, is Trevor Richards on the other side because, San Diego is they're starting to have a pretty good lineup. They're about average in getting on base and a little bit above average in power, but do we have a confirmed lineup here? Let me just double check. Yeah. Okay. So I think the lineup that they're running out today is particularly good for getting strikeouts. I have them 10% higher than average. Richard strikes out 21%, which is around average. But
23% right or 24% righties too.
Nice. Yeah, and the price tag on FanDuel and Yahoo is just dirt cheap at 6,436. So on DraftKings at 7,300, I think he's one of the better mid-price pitchers. So I really like going to Richards, even though he's a 150 dog in the game.
Yeah, I mean, Adam, I like Richards too. It's probably my favorite mid-range guy. You've got 7 righties in the lineup. I would have wished that Will Myers was still a guy that started every day ahead of Margot, give you even more Ks there. Garcia's a low strikeout guy. Manny Margot is Machado and Hosmer, but Tatis, Reyes, Renfroe, Hedges, and then you have Paddock. Those are all pretty high strikeout players. Some of them really high. And Marlins Park is very spacious, friendly to the pitcher. What are your thoughts on Richards here?
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. The big thing for me is what Alex mentioned with the Padres lineup. We had talked about it with Yamamoto yesterday, that it was kind of sneakily not a good strikeout spot. But with this lineup, the only hitters that don't really strike out easily are Hosmer, Machado, and Manny Margot. Greg Garcia is the next lowest strikeout percentage at 23.4%. Or sorry, 23.8% against right-handed pitching since the start of last season. Everyone else higher than that. You get Hedges back in the lineup over Mejia, which is a benefit from a strikeout perspective as well. Just a lot of upside here in a good park for Richards. It never really makes me feel good to be rostering Trevor Richards on a night where other people are also rostering Trevor Richards. But in this park, with the strikeout upside here and against a right-handed heavy lineup, I'm fine with it.
Do we have interest in bats from either side of this?
I could see getting to some Padres just because of Richards' ownership and because they do have a lot of power in their lineup, especially 1 through 5. But it's clearly not a high priority.
What about you, Alex?
Sorry, say the question again.
Do you have any interest in any hitters from this game?
I think so. I mean, you gotta if Richards is high owned, then going to the Padres stack could make sense as a leverage play. They are decent values. The struggle is going to be putting together a lineup that really makes use of the remaining salary, though. So I think I might end up with some mini stacks of the Padres.
All right.
Yeah, I was going to say targeting like a $3,800 Franmil Reyes is probably my favorite way to approach it. You could certainly make a case for like a Machado Reyes Renfroe mini stack.
Sounds good. By the way, you look at the stack tool, it's pretty crazy because the top 4 highest probability top stack probability teams all have significantly lower ownership than the than the probability that they are the top stack. Dodgers, especially Boston, Washington, Arizona. I mean, my guess as to that, Adam, is, and I'm looking on DraftKings, by the way, is mostly just because of how expensive these teams are on DraftKings.
Yeah, most likely.
All right. You didn't hear a word I said.
Something about top stacks and the top 10 being projected for lower ownership than their top stacks.
The top 4 of them. I'm saying Washington, Boston, Dodgers, and Arizona all have high top stack probabilities and ownership that's way lower than that. I think the pricing has a lot to do with it because some of them are really, really expensive. Arizona's really expensive. Rafael Devers is like 57 or something like. So I don't know. The reason I bring that up, thanks for helping me with the segue, pal, is because Jesse Chavez is in the next game that we get to, and he's 4,100 on DraftKings. We're going to talk about Robbie Ray, but I want to start with Chavez because while Chavez is likely going to get some ownership as a result of what I just said, he's been good against lefties this season, number one. It's a brutal park. It's hot as shit in Arlington. And the Braves or the D-backs ran out like 6 lefties yesterday. They've got 4 in the lineup today. Let's talk about Chavez. He's $100 above the minimum. And this is, by the way, strictly speaking, DraftKings.
Yeah, I was going to say definitely DraftKings only because he's 33 on Yahoo and you don't need him on FanDuel. I'll have both sides of this because basically what you're getting is an average pitcher in Jesse Chavez pitching in really terrible hitting conditions in a mediocre matchup against a team that doesn't strike out a lot, but also doesn't have the best hitters. But you're getting him at basically the minimum price tag on a slate where there's a lot of hitting to pay for and a lot of pitching to pay up for as your SP1. So just from a roster construction standpoint, it makes Chavez appealing, but it's not like I think he, breaks the slate. I don't like this isn't like a Glenn Sparkman. Not that I thought Glenn Sparkman was going to do what he did either, but it's not even like it's that kind of matchup. This is just, you're just hoping that Chavez goes and gives you 5-6 innings. And like I have him projected for 9.5 DraftKings points, and that'll get him into some lineups. But it's still terrible pitching conditions. It's still an Arizona team with an implied run total approaching 6.
Yeah, I'd mentioned in today's deep dive, if he just broke into the double digits, I'd be happy.
Right. It's the same expectations that I had for Sparkman. Sparkman just
blew them away. Yeah. Ridiculous. After we all talked shit on his strikeouts, especially me.
3.5.
Yeah, 3.5. Alex, what's going on with Chavez for you?
I think the only side I'm really considering is DraftKings, where he's 4,100. He's I think the strikeouts are a little bit below average, but he's definitely got more than that minimum price potential. The only question is whether it's really useful to use all the extra salary, and I'm thinking from what I've seen on today's slate, it might not pay to plant that low at pitcher.
Do you like Robbie Ray? It's a tough park, but it's also a Rangers team that is dismal against lefties. They're only running out 2 lefties in the lineup today. No Joey Gallo and a few other guys that are usually everyday starters not in there. But either way, high strikeout potential in Robbie Ray, tough pitching conditions. But what do you make of him here?
I think he's a great play on Yahoo, where he's 43, but he's priced up way too high for Globe Life. On FanDuel DraftKings, the Rangers today, their lineup doesn't have easier Ks than your average team. So I think, Ray's a great pitcher, but the run production potential is pretty high here. And the strikeout potential is decent, but not amazing. So I don't really think you can easily justify paying top dollar for him.
Where do you fall on Robbie Ray, Adam?
I was actually surprised I barely got any in my initial crunch, because I do think it's a favorable spot here. No Joey Gallo in the lineup takes some strikeouts out, but it also takes out clearly their best hitter, who also hits left-handed pitching really well. Ray has a 30% strikeout percentage for the season, which obviously is really good. It's one of the higher ones on the slate. Texas, gives you some strikeouts throughout their lineup, but I think he's an interesting pivot to Eduardo Rodriguez. What I think was actually happening, though, is that I'm just not really getting to that price range all that much outside of Clevenger, and where I am getting to that price range, I just really like Clevenger.
What about hitters? Both sides of this one, interest?
Yeah, Arizona in particular, because for one, Chavez I think will have some ownership, and for two, they have a really high implied run total. Chavez, it's hard because a lot of his numbers over the last couple of years have been out of the bullpen, so that skews them to be better than he actually is. But even over the last 2014, 2015, 2017, when he started the majority of his games, he was pretty decent at limiting left-handed production in particular. He wasn't a gas can against anyone, but this ballpark, obviously the ball is going to fly. You have right-handed power in Christian Walker in particular. You have some good hitters in Marte, Escobar, Adam Jones is fine, Lamb has power, Kevin Cron has power batting 8th. So I think it's a pretty deep lineup as far as power goes. It's in a great park. It's a pitcher that doesn't miss a lot of bats and will have some ownership. So I'll be getting to Arizona.
Do you like hitters from Arizona, Alex?
I like them as a pick to be contrarian spot on DraftKings. They're all a little bit below average, but just a hair as far as value. But the overall potential for the team is pretty high, so I think that's a nice spot. On FanDuel and Yahoo, they're priced pretty well, and I think they might be a little bit over-owned.
All right. What about Texas bats against Robbie Ray here?
I think on FanDuel, I'm seeing a couple of nice values, like Delino DeShields back 2nd, Danny Santana 5th. So I think you could make a nice lineup out of them, and it'll probably be pretty contrarian. But I think the overall chance of the team doing well isn't that great. I do like it though, because if they can get Ray out early, then the weather conditions are pretty good for a blow-up spot.
All right, let's keep it moving then. We've got 2 games to go. Kansas City, Chicago White Sox. Alex, Danny Duffy, Ivan Nova. Nova's allowed the most home runs on this slate. And at 22 home runs. Garrett Cole's allowed 20. He's the second most. Then there isn't a pitcher that's allowed more than 16. So the long ball has been a major issue for Nova this season, allowing multiple home runs all the time. Generally makes for a good pitcher to stack against. But Kansas City's also getting a good amount of ownership today across the board. So where do you land where do you land on the Royals bats, seeing that they're going to be one of the more popular teams today?
I'm seeing like totally the game's lighting up my value metric like completely on every site. So I think that they're going to be really high projection lineups that you're rolling out when you have a stack of either the White Sox or Royals. But the ownership's also going to be high. So I think that it's a good spot, but not necessarily one where you can get a huge edge.
Adam?
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. You definitely prefer left-handed hitters against Nova. And with Mondesi going to the injured list, you still have 4 of them in the lineup for Kansas City, but one is Lucas Duda batting 8th, who does, I guess, he's an interesting like value option in tournaments because he does have power, but Valoria as a catcher doesn't really do anything for me. Nicky Lopez and Alex Gordon really the only 2 lefties that you're super concerned about in this lineup. Not that Nova, is great against righties, but I think like Alex said, it just kind of is a team that is cheaper than they really should be on a point per dollar basis, but I really don't know how often they win a tournament.
What about the other side of this with the White Sox, or do you have interest in Danny Duffy?
Not really interested in Duffy here. I mean, you do get some strikeouts. No Eloy Jimenez in the lineup because he also is on the injured list. So that helps, but still not really getting into a lot of Duffy. Most of my pitching exposure in that range seems like it's going to just to like Trevor Richards. I think that Jose Abreu is interesting. I think that Wellington Castillo is a really good catcher play. But outside of that, I'm probably just lower on this game than most people.
Okay. Alex, do you want to talk about the White Sox or Danny Duffy here?
Yeah, sure. I think that there's some good cash plays in here, like Leury Garcia and Jose Abreu. It's way underpriced. The White Sox have a team total of 5.6, so that's really high for them, which kind of explains the really good value. On Yahoo, the whole bottom of the order is all $7, so that's pretty nice. You even have guys priced under 3K on DraftKings, which is kind of rare, like Ryan Cordell and Yolmer Sanchez. Those guys really help fill out a roster, so I could see having them as some one-offs purely as a pump play.
Okay. Well, that's 8 down, 1 to go. So let me take a second to welcome you to Awesemo. And if you've yet to check out the site, awesemo.com, do so. And, look around. A lot of free content. All of our seasonal NFL content, if you're getting ready to do your drafts, is all free right now. We've got a ton of that out there. But our DFS package, Awesemo Plus membership or subscription, 50% off if your first month, if you use the promo code Deeper Dive when you sign up. All one word, Deeper Dive. When you sign up, get you access to the ownership projections, the player projections, the stack tool, all of them we reference every show here, Monday through Friday. The Fantasy Cruncher add-on, the lineup builder, articles from all of us that we slave away tirelessly every single day doing them. Just so much content at the site. Oh, and a ton of sports, meaning any sport that has DFS, well, we've got it covered, including tennis and WNBA. I mean, you can't beat it. So check it out, awesemo.com. If you want to sign up for a membership and see what's behind the paywall, use the code or the sign-up code Deeper Dive, one word, Deeper Dive, upon checking out, and hop into the premium Slack chat when you do. All right, fellas, last one here. Angels, Houston, Adam, Garrett Cole, Felix Pena, go.
Yeah, so I think Garrett Cole is another interesting tournament option here because he's really expensive across the board, and you don't need to go there to get upside with someone like Clevenger on the slate or on Yahoo with Paddock and Ray being really cheap as well. But that's going to keep his ownership down. That and the fact that he has a brutal matchup against the Angels, who may or may not have Mike Trout in their lineup. But you don't want to lose sight of the fact that Cole has the highest strikeout percentage for any qualified starter by a pretty wide margin, up over 37% this season. He's been one of the best pitchers in baseball by basically any metric that you want to look at. He has a 30.9 K minus BB percentage, 2.62 xFIP. He just faced this Angels team 2 starts ago, picked up 9 strikeouts in 6 innings. Not that really matters. It's just that, he clearly can do it against anyone. And he's the one thing that he does give you that these other pitchers at the top don't is, that he's going to get or most likely going to get his 110, 115 pitches. Whereas we've seen Clevenger pulled early. We've seen Paddock. We know Paddock's not going to go that deep. So Cole gives you that, upside as well. It's just a matter of getting to him, but we don't have him projected at really high ownership right now, which I think is appealing. In my initial crunch, I ended up getting to, I think, around 20% on DraftKings at 12.5K. Just kind of, I know I'm overpaying, but I think that the upside's there, and I like being able to get the best pitcher on the slate at low ownership.
Alex, do you have any interest in Cole?
I think I agree with Adam. Like whenever you have a pitcher of Cole's caliber, you have to have interest. He could definitely break a slate, but I don't think I'm going to end up with a lot of them tonight because this Angels lineup, while we don't have a confirmed lineup, they're usually very difficult as far as getting strikeouts. So that makes me think that it's going to be significantly worse than an average matchup as far as Ks. It's not the lowest team total he's facing on this on the slate. I think that Clevenger versus the Tigers is a superior kind of spot as far as when you take into account the price, and you're spotting a couple of points in projection if you go up to Cole from Clevenger. And I don't really know if I'm going to really want to go for a real punt stack tonight, given that there's so many great teams batting. I do want to rewind a little bit to some comments I made earlier about the Boston game. My outlook on that game is a lot better now because the radar is kind of showing that some of the storms backing up the main storm are fading out. So I'm thinking that one looks a lot more playable now than it did to me 30 minutes ago.
5 minutes ago?
5 minutes ago. I know, yeah. I feel this weather game's tough, man. Like, you gotta put out your takes, and a lot of times they're not good looks. So I gotta throw out some respect to guys like Kevin Roth and Mark Paquette who are doing that on a daily basis. I'm just an amateur. So going back to this game, though, I think Cole just has way too high of a price given the matchup.
All right. Yeah, I do too. I could see a decent game from him, but I just like so many of the other pitchers in this range. And I guess the way I'm looking at it is if I'm going to pay up, I'll probably just go to Chris Paddock in a significantly better matchup, given that the ownership on DraftKings, at least, I'm pretty sure that Cole's still projected for more ownership. Yeah, slightly more ownership than Paddock anyway. So I don't see myself getting to Cole very often. Adam, do you have any interest in hitters here? I guess I would say particularly Houston bats.
Yeah, it's primarily the Houston side. Felix Pena is better against righties than lefties, but you're getting really affordable pricing on the Astros. You do have 2 lefties in the middle of the lineup in Brantley and Yordan Alvarez that are in good spots and really good hitters. So I like those 2. And then, you obviously can fill that out with Springer, Bregman, Altuve, anyone, Chirinos is a cheap catcher that has power. So I think Houston probably goes a little bit overlooked because the weather's not that great. The ballpark isn't bad for hitters, but it's not Texas. It's not, Philadelphia for home runs. So I think it probably goes a little bit overlooked, but you do get a lot of talent at reasonable price tags in Houston.
Are you targeting any batters from this game, Alex?
Yeah, I think I agree with Adam. It's kind of like one of the more overlooked spots of the night.
Chirinos is really cheap on DraftKings too.
Yeah, that's a good point. 3,200 for a team with a 5.6 team total. He has good power, so definitely above average catcher. I think on FanDuel they're priced up like quite a bit, so I probably won't end up with Houston on FanDuel. Although that could be your anti-optimizer play of the night now that I think about it. On DraftKings, the ownership's a little higher. One thing I like about this team is you never get the lineup before lock when they're playing on the West Coast, so that really favors people who are willing to sit at their computer after lock and fiddle with their lineups like me. So us grinders get a little bit of an edge there.
All right. Yeah, we don't have lineups on either team here. There you have it. 9 games up, 9 games down. Let's hit our top stacks before we send it off to the live before lock, guys. What do you have, Adam?
Dodgers and Boston. I did want to mention, so Dodgers, Boston, and Astros actually look like my 3 highest owned right now. I did want to mention that I adjusted something in my spreadsheet and to incorporate the stack tool, which I realized I hadn't done yet. And that knocked my Garrett Cole exposure in my first crunch from like 20% to like 10%.
Okay. Pretty significant difference there. Alex, what about you? Top stacks?
Boston on DraftKings and Yahoo, and Cleveland on all 3 sites.
All right. Were you a little bit surprised to see? I'm assuming it has to be the price, but Boston, second highest top stack probability. Their ownership at 13.4. Their ownership is basically half of that, projected at 7% on DraftKings.
I think we gotta wait till the next updates because
The weather.
yeah, the weather is kind of the X factor here, and the consensus in the industry is that it's gonna be good. So make sure you keep an eye on the top stacks tool for the most updated info.
All right. Makes sense. Hang around on the channel. Live before locks coming up next. You've got Josh, you've got Spags taking you till 7:05. Before you head out, if you like the show, you want to see more of it, you want to help support us and what we do over at Awesemo, give us a thumbs up, like the video. Very simple task, but it helps us a lot, and we're greatly appreciative, and it makes you a better person for doing so. Subscribe and hit that notification bell. Good luck tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Adam and myself. Alex is done for the week. He'll be back with us on Monday. Adam and I will close out the work week with you Thursday, Friday on the Deeper Dive. See you later.